There is a silence that arrives not with the absence of sound, but with the presence of something far more elusive. It comes in this season, this particular turning of the wheel, when the air itself seems to pause between breaths. You feel it, don't you? That strange suspension, as if the world has decided to hold its secrets just a moment longer before releasing them into your awareness. This is not the silence of emptiness. This is the silence of fullness, pressed so tightly against itself that it cannot speak. It is the silence of snow about to fall, of words about to be understood, of a life about to recognize what it has always been. We spend so much of our existence running from silence. We fill every corner of our days with noise, with distraction, with the constant chattering of minds that fear what they might discover in the quiet. But this silence, the one that appears in this season, is different. It doesn't ask for your attention. It doesn't demand anything at all. It simply arrives, like winter itself, inevitable and complete. And in its arrival, something within you shifts. Something you didn't know was waiting begins to wake. Before we go deeper into this mystery together, I want to invite you to become part of this exploration. If these words are resonating somewhere in the chambers of your being, subscribe to this journey. Leave a like not as a mere gesture, but as an acknowledgement that you too have felt this silence. Comment below and tell me where you encounter it in your own life. Because this conversation, this meditation we're sharing, it only deepens when we recognize we're not alone in sensing what cannot be easily named. Now, let us return to this peculiar silence. What makes it different from all the other silences you have known? Think about the silence of embarrassment, the silence of grief, the silence between lovers after an argument. Each silence has its own texture, its own weight. But the silence of this season, it carries a quality of invitation. It's as if existence itself is asking you to stop, not because you should, not because it's virtuous or productive, but because stopping is the only way to hear what has been speaking all along. Alan Watts understood this intimately. He knew that we are not beings who occasionally experience silence, but rather we are silence itself, occasionally experiencing noise. The thoughts, the words, the endless stream of mental commentary, these are the interruptions, not the other way around. We have it backwards, you see. We think silence is what happens when the noise stops, but perhaps noise is what happens when we forget how to listen to silence. In this season, whatever season that might be for you, whether it's winter's deep freeze, or autumn's gentle dying, or spring's pregnant pause before emergence, there comes a moment when the usual defenses don't work anymore. The distractions lose their power. The television doesn't quite satisfy. The scroll through endless images leaves you more empty than before. And in that failure of distraction, in that bankruptcy of busyness, the different silence appears. It's been there all along, of course, but now you can finally feel it. Now it has space to be recognized. This different silence isn't peaceful in the way we usually mean that word. It's not the peace of having solved all your problems or achieved all your goals. It's more unsettling than that, more alive. It's the peace of recognizing that the problems were never really problems, that the goals were elaborate ways of avoiding this moment right here, this breath, this inexplicable fact of being. The silence that appears in this season strips away the narratives. It doesn't care about your story of success or failure, your identity carefully constructed over years of effort. It sees through all of that with a kind of gentle indifference, the way winter sees through the leaves that thought they would hold on forever. And here's what's remarkable. When you stop resisting this silence, when you let it have you completely, you discover that you're not diminished by it. You're not erased. Instead, you become more real than you've ever been.
All the false versions of yourself, all the images you've maintained for others and for your own frightened ego, they fall away like clothes that never quite fit. And what remains? Not nothing, not emptiness in the sense of absence, but emptiness in the sense of spaciousness, of room for everything, of a vast interior landscape you didn't know you contained. The different silence of this season teaches you something that words can barely touch. It teaches you that you are not your thoughts about yourself. You are not your memories, though you contain them. You are not your future plans, though they arise within you. You are the space in which all of this occurs. You are the silence in which every sound is possible. And when you recognize this, even for a moment, even as a fleeting glimpse, something fundamental shifts. The desperate quality of living, that grasping, that constant anxiety about whether you're doing it right, it relaxes. Not because you've achieved anything or understood everything, but because you've remembered something more ancient than understanding. This is why certain seasons bring this silence more readily to the surface. There's something about transition, about change, about the visible dying and being born that happens in nature that mirrors what's always happening within you. The trees don't agonize about losing their leaves. The winter doesn't apologize for its cold. And yet we humans, we fight against every transition, every ending, every transformation, as if by resisting change we could somehow make ourselves permanent. But the silence that appears in this season whispers a different truth. It says, you are not a fixed thing trying to survive. You are a flowing process, an event, a happening. You are winter becoming spring, becoming summer, becoming autumn, becoming winter again. You are the whole cycle, not just one frozen moment of it.
When you sit with this silence long enough, you begin to notice something peculiar about time itself. The clock still ticks, yes. The calendar pages still turn. But there's a quality of timelessness that seeps into your awareness. You realize that this moment, this eternal now, has always been here, waiting beneath the surface of your hurried life. The past and future, those twin tyrants that dominate so much of human consciousness, they lose their grip. Not because you've forgotten them or transcended them in some spiritual achievement, but because you've seen through them. You've recognized them as mental constructs, as useful fictions, but fictions nonetheless. The silence of this season reveals that you have never actually lived in the past or future. That's impossible. You've only ever lived now, in this breath, in this sensation, in this immediate presence. But the mind, clever and restless, creates elaborate stories about what was and what will be, and then mistakes those stories for reality. It's like watching a movie and forgetting you're in the theater. The images on the screen become so compelling that you forget the seat beneath you, the darkness around you, the simple fact of sitting and watching. What happens when you remember? What happens when the silence reminds you that you're not in the movie, you're watching it? There's a kind of relief that comes, a letting go that doesn't require effort because it's actually the cessation of effort. All the striving, all the reaching toward some imagined future where you'll finally be enough, finally be complete, finally be happy, it's revealed as unnecessary. Not because the future is bad or wrong, but because the completeness you're seeking has always been here, hiding in plain sight, closer than your own breath. This is what the mystics have been trying to tell us across all cultures and all ages. This is what Watts pointed toward with his words, knowing full well that words can only point, never capture. The different silence that appears in this season is not a seasonal phenomenon at all. It's always present, like the sun behind clouds, like the ocean beneath waves. But certain moments, certain transitions in nature and in life thin the veil.
The membrane between your ordinary consciousness and this deeper awareness becomes permeable. You slip through without trying, and suddenly everything looks different, even though nothing has changed. You see a tree, and it's not just a tree anymore. It's a standing miracle, a frozen explosion of life force, a temporary gathering of atoms that somehow knows how to be a tree without anyone teaching it. You see another person, and instead of immediately categorizing them, judging them, comparing yourself to them, you glimpse the shared mystery. They too are this consciousness looking out through different eyes, wearing a different mask, playing a different role in the cosmic drama. And for a moment, the separation that seemed so absolute, so real, is revealed as another useful fiction. We are waves insisting we are separate from the ocean. The silence teaches without teaching. It transforms without trying to transform. Simply by being in its presence, by allowing it to saturate your awareness, you change. Not in the way you change when you learn a new skill or adopt a new belief. This is more fundamental. It's like rearranging the furniture in a room and discovering the room was always part of a vast mansion you never knew existed. Your sense of scale shifts. Your sense of what you are expands beyond the narrow confines of your name, your biography, your collection of memories and preferences and opinions. And here's the beautiful paradox. As you become less identified with the small self, the ego self, you don't disappear. You become more present, more engaged, more capable of genuine response to life as it unfolds. It's as if you've been living in a tiny corner of a magnificent house, convinced that corner was the entire world. When the silence shows you the other rooms, the gardens, the sky through vast windows, you don't lose that corner. You simply stop mistaking it for everything. This season, whatever it is for you, brings this teaching in the language of change. The leaves fall or they emerge. The days lengthen or they contract. The air shifts its temperature, its quality, its mood. And if you're paying attention, if you let the silence in, you recognize that you too are always changing, always dying and being born, moment to moment. There is no fixed you to defend, no permanent identity to maintain. There's only this flowing, this dance of form and emptiness, of sound and silence, of being and becoming. What freedom this brings, what lightness. When you're not constantly trying to be someone, you can simply be. When you're not defending a position, you can move with life rather than against it. The resistance that causes so much suffering, that friction between what is and what you think should be, it dissolves in the presence of this silence. Not because you've become passive or resigned, but because you've aligned yourself with reality as it actually is, rather than as you imagine it should be. The different silence of this season asks of you nothing except this. Stop for a moment. Listen not with your ears, but with your whole being. Feel the aliveness that runs through everything, including you, especially you. Recognize that you are not a separate fragment struggling to survive in an indifferent universe. You are the universe experiencing itself from this particular angle, through this particular form. When a wave crashes on the shore, we don't say the wave has died. We recognize it has returned to the ocean, which it never really left.
As we move deeper into this exploration, you might notice a strange thing happening. The more we talk about silence, the more words we use to point toward the wordless, the more you might feel something shifting within you that has nothing to do with understanding. This isn't about adding new information to your mental library. This isn't about becoming more knowledgeable or more spiritual or more anything. It's about subtraction, about letting fall away the layers of conditioning,
the accumulated beliefs about who and what you are, until what remains is simply this naked awareness, this pure presence that was here before your name, before your story, before everything you think defines you. The silence that appears in this season is intimate in a way that's almost uncomfortable. It gets close. It sees you, not the version of you that you present to the world, but the raw fact of you, the consciousness behind the mask. And this seeing is not judgmental. The silence doesn't care whether you're successful or failed, good or bad, right or wrong. Those categories don't exist in its realm. It simply recognizes itself in you, the way you might recognize your own face in a mirror after years of forgetting what you look like. There's a teaching in Zen about the gateless gate, the entrance to enlightenment, to awakening, to whatever you want to call this recognition of what you truly are, has no gate. You cannot work toward it because working toward it implies you don't already have it. You cannot achieve it because achievement happens in time, and this is timeless. You cannot earn it, deserve it, or make yourself worthy of it. It's already the case. It's always been the case. The silence of this season simply removes the obstacles you've placed between yourself and this recognition. What are these obstacles? They're so familiar you probably don't even notice them anymore. They're the constant stream of thoughts about yourself, the endless internal dialogue that narrates your life as if you needed a narrator to exist. They're the comparisons, the measurements of yourself against others and against some imagined ideal. They're the memories you cling to as proof of who you are, and the plans you make as insurance against an uncertain future. None of these are wrong. None of these need to be eliminated, but when the silence appears, you see them for what they are, movements within consciousness, not consciousness itself, waves on the ocean, not the ocean. When you rest in this recognition, even briefly, something remarkable happens to fear. That baseline anxiety that most humans carry, that vague sense that something might go wrong or that you might not be enough, it doesn't make sense anymore. What is there to fear when you recognize you are not a vulnerable, separate self trying to survive? When you see that you are the entire field in which this life is happening, what could possibly threaten you? Forms come and go. This body will age and die. This personality will dissolve. But you, the awareness in which all of this occurs, you were never born and will never die. You are what remains when everything else falls away. This might sound abstract, philosophical, like pretty words that don't connect to the reality of your daily life with its bills and obligations and relationships and challenges. But the silence that appears in this season is supremely practical. It changes how you relate to everything. When you're not identified with your thoughts, you can have thoughts without being tyrannized by them. When you're not identified with your emotions, you can feel deeply without being overwhelmed. When you're not identified with your body, you can care for it and inhabit it fully without making it your entire identity. The transformation isn't that you become someone else or somewhere else. The transformation is that you recognize what you've always been. And from that recognition, life continues. You still go to work, still have conversations, still experience pleasure and pain, but it's all happening within a larger context now. It's all seen as part of the dance, part of the play, part of this magnificent, mysterious unfolding that has no ultimate purpose except its own expression. This is what it means to be awake, not to have achieved some special state or acquired some spiritual power, simply to recognize what's obvious once you stop looking away from it. You are not in the universe. You are not a separate subject experiencing an objective world. You are the universe experiencing itself. You are the silence in which all sounds arise. You are the space in which all things appear and disappear. And this recognition, this remembering of what you truly are, brings a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, a joy that doesn't need a reason, a love that has no object because it is the very substance of existence itself. The different silence of this season is an invitation. It invites you to stop postponing your life, to stop waiting for some future moment when conditions will be right for you to finally relax, finally be present, finally be free. It invites you to recognize that freedom is here, now, always, hiding in plain sight. It invites you to see that you are not the narrow, frightened self you've believed yourself to be, but something vast and mysterious and beautiful beyond description. And the invitation requires nothing of you. It doesn't demand that you change or improve or become more worthy. It simply asks that you listen, that you feel, that you allow the silence to have you completely just for this moment. Because in that allowing, in that surrender to what is, everything shifts. Not the external circumstances necessarily, though sometimes they do, but your relationship to it all transforms. You discover that you are not the prisoner you thought you were. You discover that the cage was always open. You discover that you are, and always have been, free. This is the gift of the different silence that appears in this season. This is what waits for you, not in some distant future or far-off place, but here, now, in the simple fact of being aware, of being alive, of being.